You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For 50 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Derek Fahsbender.
Welcome, listeners. I'm Derek Fahsbender, host of the B&H Photography Podcast. I'm also host of our new monthly series, Next Frame, in collaboration with creative producer Jill Waterman and audio engineer Mike Weinstein. Inspiration doesn't have an age gap. Maybe you've heard it 100 times before, but this time it hits differently. Or this time it's where it sinks in and you have that aha moment. That's just one of our takeaways from today's chat with Grace Mc Nally, a creative Renaissance woman with a passion for community. Born and raised in Queens, New York by two creative and crafty Irish immigrants, Grace has a diverse skill set with more than 7 years of experience running her creative production house, Allegro Photo Industries. During this time, she has trained under celebrity photographer Mark Mann, won a Scholastic Golden Key, worked as an art director at Area 23, spoken at the 2023 D&AD Awards, created content for Meta, captured icons like Shaka Khan, Lil Wayne, and Drake, been interviewed by Vice, and cast talent for Roblox. Grace also plays video games and football, produces an immigrant-centered cooking show, makes zines, directs music videos, performs spoken word, collects manga, colors with children, and teaches photography to teens at NYC Salt, where she was a student herself from 2016 to 2020. Grace Mc Nally, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for such a great introduction.
It's great to have you on. Look, what don't you do? I feel like there's nothing you can't do, and it's across the board, a wide range of interests.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot I don't do, but, day by day.
Day by day, you're getting there. You'll check it all off the list. Well, I want to take it to the photography part. Obviously, that's why you're here. How did you first get into photography?
So my dad came to America as a photographer. He was a musician and lived in Bermuda after leaving Ireland. And at the time in Bermuda, if you had immigrated there, you could only have one career. So he was a full-time musician. And when the color camera came out, he picked up an interest in photography and he was given an ultimatum. So he left and came to the States and became a full-time photographer. And then my mom came to America to intern for him. So that's the story of them. And my dad passed away when I was 12. And after he passed away, I really became interested in photography. It was kind of my connection to him. And I went with it and I haven't been able to stop.
Was it from a young age, or was it really once he passed away, it was something where you're like, you know what, I want to carry on his legacy?
It was from a young age, I would say. Like, I would always watch what he would do. He was the type of person where if we blew out our birthday candles, he would have us do it again so he could get a good shot. So, yeah, I always had that interest, and he had given me like a small digital camera. And then maybe a few weeks after he passed away, I started to take photos on an iPod Touch. And eventually I worked up the courage to ask my family if I could use his camera. And everybody was very nervous about it, but I got to use an actual camera. And shortly after that, I found NYC Salt, and that really threw me into the world of photography.
I actually used to mentor at NYC Salt. So for anybody who is not familiar with NYC Salt, wonderful organization. And really, my time there, it's like I enjoyed it so much. And it's the passion that you see in the students at NYC Salt. It's like even at a young age, they're so passionate about photography. What is probably the biggest thing you learned in your time at NYC Salt?
I would say to work a subject. Like, that was really taught to us. I'll shout out Scott Thody. He was a teacher at Salt. He was also a personal mentor of mine and still is. And he would have us literally dance around a subject. Like, he would put music on and say, okay, we all need to dance, like move your bodies, move around. And through that, he ingrained in us, like, when you shoot a subject, I want to see you low, high. I want to see you everywhere. And when you leave, you can look back and know that you've captured everything that you could have. So that was definitely something that has always stuck with me.
Scott is a great instructor, and I think it's his, again, passion. Just like the students, Scott has such a passion, not only for photography, but also for teaching, It makes it infectious. And when you listen to him teach and watch him do what he does, you see why it's such a successful program.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's so many people that walk through the doors of Salt that are so passionate about the craft and being there. And I'll speak for myself, being a student and seeing that, it really made me not afraid to be passionate about something and to show that. I think, especially when you're a teenager, sometimes being really passionate about things, it doesn't always look cool.
Mhm.
But that's something that was really taught at Salt is just, like you should be on fire right now. Like whatever makes you feel that way, keep with it. And Alicia and Adam, all of the alumni and teachers at Salt are so insistent about helping you follow your passions.
Definitely. Now, did that shape your trajectory from there? I mean, you didn't go to college, you took a more direct route to studying photography. And then you also introduced to D and AD Shift NY, design and art direction. Can you talk about how you discovered D and AD?
Yeah, so funny enough, I was on Instagram and I remember at the time speaking to my friends. I graduated high school during the pandemic, so I didn't have a graduation and I went to school for a semester and at the time I just couldn't sit still. Like it was hard for me to just sit on my laptop and I was also like, why am I paying full tuition? It didn't work for me. So I went into working and through Salt I was connected with Mark Mann, who is an incredible photographer. And I was a production assistant for a show that he has on YouTube. And I remember when I walked in, him and his co host were like, we want to give you a photo education without you going to school. So they just really threw me in. And another thing that was taught to me at Salt was to be a sponge when you're around people you admire.
Mhm.
So anytime I'm on set, and especially at that point, I was just absorbing what they were doing.
How familiar were you with Mark's work before you began working for him?
I didn't know about Mark's work before I started working for him. I was introduced to his work a few weeks before him and I actually met. We were connected through Michael Kaminsky, who's an amazing producer that works closely with Salt. So he had told me a bit about his work, and I had seen his photos before. I was a huge fan of Anthony Bourdain growing up, so he has an iconic image of Anthony Bourdain
Mhm.
that I had seen time and time again. I remember the first day I walked in, like, he's such a personality.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
I love Mark.
Yeah, no, Mark is great. One of the things that I really noticed watching him was kind of how he disarms the people that he's shooting with his personality, like through his jokes particularly. Like I
Mhm.
remember he had a joke app on his phone and he would as we would have coffee in the morning, he would be looking through his jokes and he was like, this is important. And I would see him use those jokes on people as he shot them. And, as we spoke more, he told me, like, sometimes you have 3 minutes to shoot someone. And the way you can get a most authentic photograph, it's really about how you connect with people. So I saw from him that he really used his charm, his charisma, his personality to get that photo.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, it's like he's sarcastic. His sense of humor, he'll say something and you're like, is he
Yeah.
joking? Is he serious? He's like very straight up, but he's super talented and he commands that respect when he's on set. When you see him, you can just tell he knows what he's there to get. And I think that confidence really shines through and helps anybody who I can imagine is learning under him. Like, there's no better person to learn from of how to go in there and take charge of a set and a shoot.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another part of that is he's so kind and very down to earth. And I think that helps him connect with such a variety of people. When I was working under him, he had started a project that's out now where he was photographing dancers. So we'd have sometimes 20 dancers come into the studio in a day. And he had such a genuine connection also because he's very curious. And that's something that has always been very rooted in myself. I'm a very curious person. Like I will rattle off questions for hours and I love to learn. That was also something that I picked up watching him and watching other photographers as well. Like being curious will always lead you to have fresh perspective and fresh views.
Grace, can we circle back briefly to D and AD Shift and how you found out about them?
Yeah. DNAD is a award house and like advocates of design and art direction, originally based in London. And DNAD Shift is a program that they have for non-traditional creatives across the globe to bring them into the world of advertising. So I was still working with Mark Mann and I came across the program and I applied. At the time, I was really wishing I had a creative community. A lot of my friends were in college, and something I had always heard from photographers about going to school for photography in New York is predominantly just about paying for connections. And I remember that made me mad. I was like, you shouldn't have to do that, like paying for a human connection that just isn't right with me. So I went into working. Anyway, I was accepted to DNAD Shift, and I was the youngest person in the program. It's not usually geared towards people under 20. I was 18 at the time, and the oldest classmate I had was 54. So it's pretty wide range. And it's people at different stages of their career who just have very non traditional backgrounds. It's a 6-month course. And in it, I realized that so much of what I really love to do with photography could be classified as art direction. So I really got to play around with that. And we did a few briefs for different brands, Spotify, Diageo, Airbnb. In the program, you're introduced to a lot of different agencies. We would go in person and connect with people in the industry. And I was scouted for Area 23, which is a pharmaceutical agency in New York. I had never thought of myself getting into that lane, but a lot of the work that they made was very inspiring to me. And it is an incredible agency, and they do give people so much freedom when it comes to pitching your ideas. So there was a lot of great work I got to work on there.
That sounds so fascinating. I never heard of DNAD Shift before. Is it a paid course or is it merit-based or?
So it's a free course. It's kind of like a free night school. And it's about finding balance. So I was lucky at the time where I was working with Mark Mann and doing freelance work. So I did have a lot of flexibility in my schedule, but a lot of my classmates did have full-time jobs. But the same thing for Salt, you get out of it what you put into it. And I think both of those programs really taught me about the power of community and helping each other and doing free work and just having conversations. And those connections have been what has got me jobs. Having these genuine connections with people and struggling on them with projects. And those are the people that I work with time and time again. And I find myself doing the work that makes me the most happy.
Well, speaking of that perspective, how has your vision as a photographer changed through this whole process? I mean, you've learned through great organizations, you've worked under Mark Mann, but ultimately you have to find your own way and voice and vision as a photographer. What were you interested in when you first started that photography journey? And how do you compare what you used to produce then and what you're doing now with your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I started photography, I was really learning how to express myself. I wasn't very good with my words, and photography became an outlet for me that I had never had. Like I could just create something. I love Photoshop. I love photo manipulation and self-portraiture. So when I first really had that passion for photography, it came out through my self-portraits. And it was like a self-service type of thing. It was kind of like a diary for me, my photos. And even now I can look back at every one of those photos and I can remember how I felt when I saw the image in front of me. It was just like a sigh of relief. Where I'm at now in my photography and what I try to do with my work is to serve others. So a lot of the projects that I work on, I really want to hear other people's stories. I know how powerful visual media is at the moment and the history of visual media. So I really just try to see who can I make something with and how can their life be changed by what I'm doing. So I work with a lot of small artists. I'm currently living in Ireland for the next few months, and I'm working on a project here finding musicians that make music askelga, so they make music in Irish, and I'm doing free media for them. For musicians nowadays, it's so difficult. You're not only making music, but you have to create a personality for yourself online, create the content, and build a visual identity. And I think when you have the space to just make art for the sake of making art, that's when you can make things that really connect with people. So I'm trying to just help lighten the load a little bit by saying, I want to help you with the visual component of it and just offer that perspective.
I think we need more of that in the creative industry where it's not so focused. And again, people are going to take this out of context. Not everything has to be paid though. And I think depending on where you are in your career, where the other person is, and sometimes two artists just want to get together and collaborate on something for the sake of creating. Is there a favorite gig or commission so far or collaboration with a musician that stands out to you as a favorite or one that's most memorable?
Hmm. I actually just directed my first music video in Europe.
Congrats.
Thank you. It was with a very good friend of mine. Her name is Chloe Katara. She's an artist based in Brussels. I know her from New York. And she was like, oh, you have to come with me to Fête la Musique, which is a huge music festival in Paris. She was like, like I'm staying at a place. You can come by. I was like, all right, well, let's go. So we went and she was saying that she had a music video that was going to be shot. And last minute, the director pulled out. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do it. So we did the storyboard in her kitchen a week before the shoot. And we had a videographer that was flying from Poland. So we all got in a call and spoke about it. And it was so much fun. It wasn't a paid gig. Sometimes that takes away the stress
Totally.
part of it. I know for me, when I started to do fully paid work and made a living just off of my photography, it changed the nature of photography for me. When I started doing photography, like I said, it was kind of like a spiritual thing. It was a way for me to express myself and understand my emotions. And then when it became work, 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 I couldn't look at a camera anymore and just think about doing something creative. I would look at it and be like, I should be making money right now. And yeah, it wasn't enjoyable anymore. So it took me finding other ways of making money through my creativity to have that back. And I'm so glad that I do now. And it's taught me how important it is to have boundaries. When you're working in the creative field, having work that is just for you to experiment. So I think free work is a part of that. I think if there's people that you admire and you want to create something with, you should go for that. And sometimes maybe they're in a position where it can be paid, and that is so amazing. But I would challenge people to try to do it just to see how they feel. It doesn't have to be a huge project, even if it's a single shoot, but just, gauge for yourself, how does that make you feel versus working?
I love that. It's such a mature and nuanced take. And you're already in your career seeing things that sometimes people don't realize for a couple decades or never realize at all. I want to go back to that job. You mentioned doing something for free takes the pressure off. Totally resonates with me. At that point, you're just creating and the passion's there. And the last thing you want to do is take something that we do because we love it and turn it into a job or a task or something that we dread. And you also talked about just doing different things. And I think that's so important for knowing what you like, but also what you don't like and what you don't want to do. And the more jobs you take on and gig work and paid commissions and even just these collaborations with other artists, it kind of notches you a little bit forward towards where you want to be. The more you learn what you like, the more you learn what you don't like. Now, looking back at that in hindsight, is that how you're looking at different jobs? Are you taking a job and saying, you know what? I love this. I kind of want to go more towards this. Has that helped get you towards where you want to be as a photographer?
Yes. And the reality is that you have to make money at the end of the day. So no matter what comes along, I decide to take it as a learning opportunity. And even if halfway through, I'm like, okay, now I know this is something I don't like, that is super valuable. And in doing that, I've also found things I need to grow. And I'm doing a project at the moment. I do art direction, and a lot of my work is almost like illustrative photography. I
Hmm.
do so much post and Photoshop. I'm working on a project right now, and it's slowly turned very illustrative, which is honestly out of my comfort zone. When it comes to the Adobe suite, Illustrator has probably been like my enemy. I don't have fun with it. I love Photoshop. But yeah, so I'm like, okay, you know what? This is something for me to learn from. And then I'm just throwing myself at it. And there are things I'll pick up along the way. And doing projects like that in the past, it's definitely helped me learn how to clean up my work a bit more and even changed my shooting style. So I worked in an agency for a year, and then I've worked freelance for about a year and a half. And what I saw, especially while working in house at an agency, was the value of being a photographer in a different stage of production. The books that I was handing off to photographers um, looked a bit different than people that did not have a photography background. There was a different asset that I had, and everybody has their own thing. So, yeah, I think trying different jobs and seeing how you can apply those skills is very, very valuable.
You also have a really, really creative mind. In looking through your work, it stands out. You're creating something from nothing. And I think that's the hardest thing to do. There's photographers that can recognize a good shot, take a photo, or so many studio photographers. It's like no matter how well you light it, you're just on a backdrop taking an image. Your work with Photoshop, the way you see, from your selfie series to your regular portfolio gives very mixed media vibes. Who is to thank for that? What is to thank for that? What's the main inspiration for the way you see?
I have a lot of artists in my family, like a lot of painters. I'm one of five. I'm the second youngest of five. So they would take us to a lot of museums. So I'm very lucky to be in New York and have been exposed to so many things. One of the first people I came across who really focused my style, Olivia Locker, she was my first mentor at NYC Salt. And I remember when Olivia and I first met, like in the first three times we hung out, at some point we were just silent because we understood each other so well and we were just such similar people. And I was 14 and she was a accredited photographer and just so full of life. And I remember going to her apartment and she had a studio built into her living room and she would just pull things onto the paper and get started. And I was so inspired by that. So then I just started to shoot a lot around the house. I remember one of my first self portraits is like I had photoshopped a match to be balancing on my tongue. It was for a self portrait challenge at Salt. And I shot that in my little brother's room with a phone flashlight. I just really got around to playing with things in my house. And I have so many incredible people in my life that have really encouraged me to go as crazy as possible. My mom loves to collect stuff for me. I remember one day she brought me a bag of 20 deflated basketballs. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? And she was like, "You're gonna use it for something. Like, I know you." And sure enough, a year later, I have a studio built into my bedroom and I was shooting a friend and I was like, "Oh, I have the exact perfect thing." And I pulled out the bag of 20 deflated basketballs. Yeah, it's kind of a thing. If you're thinking of something, I probably have it in my house. I collect a lot of stuff. So I've just gotten used to working with what's around me and I also have to attribute that as well to Irish culture. It's kind of funny to me, but if you go into an Irish person's backyard, there's going to be a bench made out of, I don't even know what you use to make this. Like, is that a milk carton? I don't know what's going on here, but there's just a bit of craftiness that is so rooted into Irish culture and into so many people that immigrate. My parents are immigrants, and that's something I'm very proud of. And I think resourcefulness is definitely a huge part of the way that I create.
Definitely. And I mean, you're even resourceful with your gear. Can you talk about your gear? I have an aversion to the phone. I can't see through my phone. I have a mental block,
Mhm.
but you mentioned the iPod Touch, and I know you use your phone for some of your photography. What is your gear looking like?
I have a Canon R6 Mark II, and then my favorite lens is a 16 to 35 millimeter. It's so good for photo and video, and I've been increasingly doing more video work.
Okay.
So it's something I love, especially for self-portraiture. I mean, I know Nikon has the same, and I teach with Nikon cameras at Salt, but I'm so grateful for these apps that we can use as a mirror. It's very helpful for self-portrait photography. So I love to play with that. But I will work with whatever I have. Sometimes if I only have my phone, I'll work with my phone. I also have shot with VHS cameras, mini DV cameras. I'll work with anything, honestly.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Does the tool play into what you're doing with the vision for the work? Say you're given something, if you're given the R5, the R6, you're given something where you can do anything with, or you're given a mini DV or a VHS. Does that change the way you see as a photographer or no?
I would say no. I think what impacts me more is the setting
Okay.
than my gear. Honestly, sometimes if I can only shoot with my phone, maybe it makes me a little bit more competitive where I'm like, okay, like how can I make this look awesome on a phone? So yeah, I think maybe that would be the case. But I do love my R6 though. Like, yeah, it's treated me well. So
I totally get the whole, it's like you love a challenge. I love to say, I almost love working with less sometimes to kind of see what I can pull out. And it gets a little boring when you have everything you need and everything goes as planned. Is there a time that you can think of where you were doing a job and stuff didn't go as planned and how you pulled through the adversity?
Well, I guess this is geared a little bit more to a different creative project of mine, but I started producing a cooking show last year on YouTube. And the idea behind the show is that I talk to parents that immigrated to the States and I have them teach their child a dish from their culture. And then they also talk about culture and their kids will talk about being raised between cultures. Now I'm also shooting it in Ireland. It's something I've been working on myself. It's a passion project, and I have great friends that are working on it with me. But we had a shoot day and it was our first time. We scheduled 3 episodes in one day. So we're shooting in a commercial kitchen and we have a separate set for interviews. So it's a lot going on to get 3 episodes in one day. I would never do it again because you're making full dishes. But particularly, I remember the last dish that we shot, it was a friend of mine making the Puerto Rican drink, coquito. You know, I remember I had like 4 hours of sleep. I was working the day before and I got there at 7 a.m. to build the set. And by the time we were shooting them, it was 8 p.m. And the blender exploded and there was coquito everywhere. Like cinnamon was like burned into everything. It got on some of the gear. And what that taught me about myself and has been made clear is when stuff like that happens, I shut down in a good way where it's just, I don't have any emotion. I'm just like, all right, let's get it done. I cleaned everything. I just like went into that mode where I was getting everything ready to continue however much possible. So definitely didn't go right, but that's also one of my favorite episodes of the show because it's just natural that things go wrong in the kitchen.
Totally. And we all know sweet stuff and especially liquid and gear don't mix.
Yeah, we had a camera smelling like condensed milk for a while.
Doesn't sound too bad. I'd rather that than the sticky buttons that get jammed.
Oh, yeah, no.
Now, we've talked about doing free work and gig work, and there's a line that we all have to draw. You talked about boundaries, and I think that's such a great thing to point out because if you do all free work and you don't know where to draw a line or you don't have boundaries, you're the free work person. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to then parlay that into paid jobs and ultimately a career as a freelancer.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the younger photographers who are trying to find their way? You have to take gig work. You have to do some free stuff. Mm-hmm. How do you get beyond that? How do you find your value? And who helped you get to that point where you knew your worth, you knew what to charge, or are you still figuring that all out?
Mm-mm. Well, first I will say you can tell when free work is respected and when it's not. And that's what I will say is the line. I think if you're doing free work for somebody and it's not respected and you're not respected, then it doesn't make it worth it. And I think that's something that you should keep in mind. And you find out for yourself, like, when is it worth it to do free work? And for me, respect is a huge part of sets that I'm on, of the projects that I take on. And I won't work without respect. And I don't think that something being free means that should be gone.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that's what I will say to people. I think that having respect for yourself and the person that you're doing work for, having respect for you, that relationship is something to take notice of, particularly when you're starting out. I know that some people say that work is not as respected when it's free. And I think it just really depends on the person and making your intentions clear that this is something that I'm building a career in and I'm building a path and I don't want to be doing this forever. So having that conversation with yourself and also as you're doing these gigs, letting people know what it is that you're interested in. I remember shooting headshots for a director pretty early on in my career. It was a 2-hour shoot and she paid me like $50. But, I had the conversation about where I wanted to go. And we've been in touch since, and she's hired me for better paying gigs. But, if you're not getting money out of it, what else are you getting out of it? Is it the connection? Is it the content that you're making? And I think that should impact where you want to go, especially when you're a young photographer. Sometimes people will message you and say, like, yeah, like my cousin's baby shower for X amount of dollars, or my school soccer game for X amount of dollars. And I think it's important to think about, okay, well, this is where I want to be in the end. So which project will take me a little bit closer to that? And whether it's the content that you're shooting, like maybe shooting somebody's baby shower is not what you want to do, but at the same time, what else can you get out of the situation? Is it negotiating? If you do that and you want to negotiate being paid a little bit more, then you can look back on that later and be like, okay, like this is what I learned from it. So I would say with any gig that you're taking, whether it's free or for low pay, try to slow down for a second, because when we're working, we're go, go, go. And you need to get the good picture. You need to like advocate for yourself. You need to know that you have control of what you're shooting. Try to think about, okay, what can I learn right now? And for where I want to be when I have my next foot down, what are some skills that will help me continue to move forward?
I love that advice. Get something out of it. It's like, even if you're doing a free job, or we've all done jobs that we don't particularly like, or they might not really fit our portfolio, but for whatever reason we do them, and you hit the nail on the head. If you can get something out of it, if you can get a connection, or I like that you said there's jobs that you've taken and done for free or a small amount of money that then lead to bigger paying jobs. And I personally, that resonates with me, because I can't tell you the number of jobs I did as a favor or a freebie for somebody. And then next thing you know, somebody sees that and you're making 4 times what you would have made on the first shoot on the second shoot.
Yeah.
And then it just builds out your network. So for all the younger listeners out there, that is critical advice. Even if you're not getting a payday out of it, even if you're not getting something for your portfolio, sometimes it's just, hey, it's a good word that somebody passed along. Oh, I did work with her. She was great. She was professional. So cool to work with. And you never know who's going to hear that or see that project and reach out to you. Now, I want to talk about skill set, because that's kind of one of the things that you had mentioned earlier. You're starting to do more hybrid work, getting into video. And you have this mixed media look to your work, as I had said. Where do you see yourself going in the next 5 years? Is it more towards video, or do you kind of have a direction, or are you just kind of going with the flow for now?
A little bit of a struggle I have at the moment. It's something I'm figuring out, compartmentalizing my work versus blending it together. So, like I said, I have this cooking show, and at the same time, I love doing very experimental self portraiture and photography. And it's something I've struggled with. I can divide my energy and my time into doing these projects, but when it comes to the rest of my career, what does it look like? So I'm kind of letting the video work be one piece and my photo work be another. But at the same time, a lot of my self portraiture and the work I do with musicians doing video is really helpful. And I think I found a way to blend them together. So I don't know, it's something I'm figuring out and seeing where it goes along. I have always struggled a little bit with creating labels for myself. So the best thing for me is I like to show people what I do. Like I love showing people my website. I love making zines and giving them to people and being like, okay, you can kind of pick this apart and take from it what you will.
You're having fun with it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you need to have less direction. Not when you're my age. The older you get, the less time you have. You got to have it figured out by then. But I think one of the beauties of being a younger creative is you can dip your foot in everything and see what you like, see what you don't like, and kind of just find your way. And it sounds like you have an extensive body of work already, and you have the professional chops. You clearly have the brain for this industry. I mean, it feels like I'm talking to a veteran photographer with some of this advice you're giving for younger photographers. It's like this is stuff that people really take 10, 20 years to learn, and you're already putting it there. Is that more about you, or is it an effect of you and the people and organizations that you've been working under?
I couldn't answer that, but I would say absolutely. I have worked with so many incredible people, and I really listen to what they say. I think learning from people that have done it before you is always smart. And I also say, like, try not to be stubborn when people give you advice. Like, even if in the moment it's something that you're like, what are you talking about? Just put it in your pocket and come back to it. I love writing down advice that people have given me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is it just like the visual aspect of having it there to see and you can always look at it?
Yeah, definitely. Also, some great advice that I got in the DNAD program that has really been helpful for me. I know so many people in every stage of their career, but particularly young creatives struggle with imposter syndrome. And some advice that I was given was to have like a praise wall or a compliment wall. So when someone has given me good feedback on my work, or just something that I'm like, wow, this really makes me happy to hear, I save it. And I have a folder on my desktop. And I also, have some things written down at home. But I reflect on that when I'm feeling out of sorts. And it kind of helps me get back on track.
And if someone's just starting out, what has been the most instrumental piece of advice that you think you could give to somebody, something that has really affected you the most in your career?
Don't stop shooting and don't delete your work.
Interesting.
Yeah, don't delete your work. I think people can get very frustrated when things don't come out the way that you want it to. And one of the glorious things we have about digital media is that there's so much space. Like a 256 gigabyte SD card can hold so much compared to shooting on film. So I love to look back at my work, even from when I first started, from when I was 14. And oftentimes I've actually sampled that work in new work that I make. Like, because I do multimedia work as well, I guess it's a bit easier too. But I've taken, like vacation photos and turned it into something completely different. But either way, I think when you can reflect on even what you were shooting a month ago, it helps to train your eye. And I think so many artists of all mediums can look at a piece and like cringe when they're like, oh, like this could have been so much better. But like live in that cringe for a second so that going forward, okay, this is what I don't want to do. And this is how I feel. So I think that can help you enhance your work.
I've been living in my own cringe for 2 decades now. Still trying to get out of it. Look, we started this series as like younger photographers to inspire other younger photographers. But the thing I love is that inspiration doesn't have an age gap. And you can be somebody who's been working for 20 years. And sometimes it's just the right person to come along and drop that piece of advice. And maybe you've heard it 100 times before, but this time it hits differently, or this time it's like the time where it sinks in and you have that aha moment. And there's stuff that you're saying here, Grace, where it's like, yeah, I may have heard it. I may have even said it before, but then it's like, wait, does it sink in or not? And I think it goes back to you talking about you actually take the advice, you learn from other people. And that's such a hard thing to get across to people, that great advice is all around you, experience is all around you. But if you're not soaking it in, if you're not learning from it, then it's not going to make you a better photographer. It's not going to make you a better person. You really have to take it and internalize it. And yeah, it's such a great thing to see younger photographers who are learning from others and learning from their own experience. Now, what do you have coming up in the future? Are there any projects that you're working on? Anything you're excited to talk about?
Yeah, so my self-portraiture is kind of like the largest body of work that I have, or the longest shot body of work that I have. And in the few months that I'll be living in Ireland, I'm working on a self-portrait series. So I shot kind of like a trial for it last year. I'm very lucky to live in some gorgeous landscape in Ireland. And me as a person, I find myself like obsessed with nature. Like nature is a crucial part of my life. So yeah, I'm working on a body of self-portraits in the ever-changing landscape of Ireland. So I'm really excited to show that. And like I said, advice is something that's really important to me. And I have always loved spending time with my elders and talking to my elders. So I've been recording interviews of people around Ireland, particularly some Sean-Nós storytellers, which are old style storytellers. And yeah, I have a few things coming out.
Wonderful. It sounds like you constantly, creating, or at least keeping the wheels turning in your head. And it makes sense. Look, coming from these programs that mentor, it instills in you the value of mentoring and of teaching others. And I think that's how this whole creative wheel goes around: community and uplifting others, and realizing that a rising tide raises all ships. And such a good perspective to have, where you can create your own work, but give back to the community as well, and educate and inspire others.
Yeah, something that has been said to me early on that I think is important for everybody to think about, especially with like the buzzword networking, is networking across like the people that are sitting next to you. That's so important. I remember when networking was first kind of introduced to me, I felt a little icky about it, until first it was said to me like, you're just making friends. And that felt better. And then when someone said like, the importance of networking across and seeing who's next to you, I think particularly photographers, that's very important to do, to kind of expand out of your industry a little bit, especially when the lines are becoming so blurred. Like, I mean, I do photo and video because I really enjoy it, but I know so many photographers feel like they have to do video now to make a living and to have their jobs. That's always something that's being asked. So I think it's really important to extend out of your industry a little bit. And that doesn't have to change what you do. If you don't want to do video, then you really don't have to, and nobody has to make you do that. But I think photographers are needed everywhere. You need photographers on film sets. You need photographers everywhere. Whether it's, if you have friends that are writers, if you have friends even in the medical industry. I have a good friend in the medical industry. And when I was in high school, I did a little bit of medical photography. You can go anywhere. And I think that's also part of being curious, is just seeing what's going on. And this has probably been some of the advice that was the most impactful to me when I was toying with the idea of not going to college, or what am I going to do? I spoke to Scott Thode, and he was saying to me, no matter what career you end up in or you focus on, these little things that you did along the way to get there are going to enhance who you are in the end, like what you do finally. So if you worked at a restaurant, that will impact the type of photos that you take. Like maybe that's attention to detail, XYZ. But, just having a winding path is not a bad thing to me. I think you can pick up things in so many different places and from different conversations with people to enhance the work that you do.
Totally. A winding path is way more interesting anyway. Who wants to take the short way? Take the way that you get lost, and you have the scenic route, and make some stops along the way.
Yeah.
Grace, this was awesome. I didn't know I was going to get this much advice and information. I'm like, this was an informational session as much as it was about your creative process and what's going on in your head when you're creating. So I want to thank you for that. Where can we learn more about your work and keep up on everything?
So you could check me out on Instagram. My Instagram is grmcn. My website is gracemcnally.com. And you could also find me on LinkedIn. I'm from New York. I'm spent a lot of time in New York, and I'm now kind of toying with the idea of spending more time in Europe, in London. So I love to meet people in person. I love experiencing new things. So you could find me somewhere in person too. I love galleries, all of that.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing your career blossom even more. I want to thank you for joining us today, Grace. This is a wonderful conversation.
Yes, thank you so much.
Of course, a pleasure to have you on. And thank you to all of our listeners for joining us today as well. If you are a fan of the show but are not yet a subscriber, please head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, B&H's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts and click subscribe. You can also find us on the Explorer blog, where we post photos from our guests along with our show notes. And please join us on Facebook at the B&H Photography Podcast group, where you can share your favorite photos and comment about the show. I'm your host, Derek Fahsbender. Jill Waterman is our creative producer. Episodes are recorded, mixed, and edited by technical producer Mike Weinstein, and our executive producer is Richard Stevens. On behalf of us all, thank you so much for tuning in today.